Hello guys, and welcome back to another tutorial. So on today's video we're going to learn how to draft this deep illusion corset blouse. If that sounds like something you're interested in learning, keep on watching and let's get right into the video. So we're going to draft this from scratch. I already went ahead to rule out the lines here. This is the shoulder line, the bust line, and the under bust, waist and hip line, also known as the full length of the blouse. I'm going to place the tips just so you see where the measurements are placed. The bust point line is 10 inches, the under bust 13 inches, the waist line is 17.5 inches, while the full length of the blouse is 24 inches. Now we're going to go ahead to start from the top part here. I'm going to mark the shoulder measurement divided by 2, and I'm going to mark that out. Now we're going to come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope as usual, and then after marking out this 1 inch, we're going to mark 7.5 inches for the opening of our armhole, and we're going to rule that out. Next, I'm going to go ahead to mark out our neckline opening, and I'm marking 3 inches by 3 inches. So I'm going to mark it out, and then we're going to curve the neckline opening. Now I'm ruling a straight line from the 1 inch we went down by. We're ruling that line all the way to our neckline. So this is what we have. Now on the bust point line, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2, which is 3.5, and I'm going to mark this all the way to the waist line, and then rule a straight line all the way down. Next, we're going to go to the shoulder slope there. I'm going to take note of the measurement I have there and divide it by 2. After dividing this by 2, we're going to mark the midpoint of the shoulder, and then from that midpoint we're just going to draw a straight line down to our bust point. Now on my bust point line, I'm marking 1 inch at this point here. I'm also going to take it down to the under bust and mark 1 inch. After marking that, I'm going to rule a straight line at that point. After extending that line in between my bust point and my under bust point, I'm taking note of what I have there, and I'm going to use that as the circumference to draw out the circle. So I'm just marking this all around to form a circle. So after drawing out the circle, we're going to take out our darts. At this point here, we're going to take out 0.75 inches, and at this other point here, we're going to take out 1 inch. So we're going to work with a straight dart. So I'm just taking this all the way down, and then we're going to rule a straight line. Next, following the dart lines we've created, we're going to trace the curve of our bust from the bust point down to the bust line we created. You want to make use of your curve for this to get a very perfect result. So I'm just using dotted lines first, and then I'm just going to go back in to trace it out. So guys, I did not realize my phone stopped filming, but basically what I was trying to explain, after ruling out the bottom part here, I also went ahead to do the same thing for the top part. So we took out 1 inch on this part and 0.75 on the opposite side, and then we curved it downwards the way you're seeing it right now. So next we're going to start adding in our body measurements. So I'm starting off with my bust measurements divided by 4. I'm going to mark that out, and then I'm going to mark out my under bust, waistline and hip line divided by 4. So after marking your measurement, you want to return the dart we took out at this point. So you're going to take note of what you took out and then add it back to your original measurements. So we've gone ahead to add in all our measurements, but before I go ahead to rule this out, we're going to take out 1/2 inch on our waistline because we want to snatch the waist of this corset. So I'm going to go ahead to take out 1/2 inch from my original measurements. You can go as far as taking out 1 inch, but I want to be comfortable, and 1/2 inch is okay with me. So I took out 1/2 inch, and now I'm going to rule out the measurements together. Another thing you should know when ruling from your waistline down to the bottom part of the blouse is you're not supposed to rule it this straight. I only did this method because I do not have my curve with me. If I had my curve, I would have ruled it with the curve. So you can see that after ruling a straight line, I went ahead to come up by 1/2 inch to help create that curved effect. So far, this is what the front pattern looks like. Now we're going to go back to this bust area, and we're going to come out at the bust point line here. We're going to mark out 1 inch. So I'm going to mark out 1 inch and curve this out. After curving out that part, we're going to take it from here all the way back down to create the shape we want. Now I'm just going to outline this so you see this clearly. So guys, on this part here, before we do anything, we're going to mark out the plunge neckline, how deep we want it to be. So you'd want to decide how deep you want yours to be. I went with 13 inches, although I later went ahead to come down by about 1 more inch. So I'm going to start curving this out to create our plunge neckline, and I'm starting from this armhole area here. So I'm just using the pencil to just curve this. Following this is just basically as a guide, especially if you're a beginner at making something like this. And then I'm going to curve it all the way to my under bust. So this is what it's looking like so far. I'm just going to continue retracing this. After tracing out everything, I'm going to go ahead to label the pattern pieces before cutting them out. So like I said before, I went ahead to come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to mark that out and retrace the depth of our plunged neckline. After retracing my pattern, I'm going to cut this out. So after cutting everything out, for the bottom part, we're going to close this up because we're going to have this as a dartless bodice. So I'm going to close this up and then I'm going to tape it down to stay to make sure it stays in place. After taping that down, we're going to create the shape we want at the bottom part of this blouse. So I'm going to take my tape and then at this part here where we have the line, I'm going to mark out 1.5 inches. You can go as far as 1.75. I'm going to mark that out and I'm going to use that as a guide to create the shape that I need. So after marking this out, I'm just covering this all the way towards the side of our pattern, as you can see, and then from that point we're going to come forward and then curve it all the way to the front as well, after which we're going to cut this out, and that will be all for the front pattern. After cutting this out, we're moving on to draft out the back part of our pattern. So for the back pattern, I basically ruled out every line we have at the front part. The only difference is we have a zip at the back, so I'm going to add the zipper allowance here, which is what I did, and the zipper allowance is 1.5 inch wide. So now what I'm going to do next is we're going to start by marking that line. So I'm just going to mark this all the way down and then we're going to take out the darts. We're going to take out 1/2 inch on both sides of our darts, so we're going to be taking out 1 inch. So like I said, at the dart line I took out 1/2 inch on both sides, so I'm just marking out 1/2 inch and then we're going to roll this all the way up as well as all the way down to create our diamond darts. Next, I'm going to start putting in my body measurements divided by 4. So I'm marking that for my bust points, the under bust, waist and the hip line as well, the same way we did for the front. And take note that we haven't added sewing allowance to this, so you'd want to add your sewing allowance when transferring this to your fabric. But if you feel like you're going to forget, feel free to add it to your pattern before cutting this out. After marking all our measurements and returning our darts we took out, we're still going to take out 1/2 inch for our snatching. Like I said, for the front we took out 1/2 inch, so we're also going to do the same thing for the back. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark out the depth of our yoke because the yoke is going to be slightly deep. So I'm going to mark out 11.5 inches at this point here, and on the opposite side we're going to mark 7.5 inches. After marking that out, we're going to use dotted lines to just curve that all the way to meet the 11.5 inches we created initially, and then we're going to go in again to outline this. Next, on the zipper area, I'm going to take out 1/2 inch just to eliminate bulge at the zip part. So I'm going to mark out 1/2 inch and then we're going to rule this out. So because we took out 1/2 inch at the zipper area, we're going to place back that 1/2 inch at the waistline area to complete our measurements. I hope you do not get confused. We're just replacing the 1/2 inch we took out there back to this point here. So I'm going to retrace that 1/2 inch back to our initial measurements. So guys, do not get confused. The 1/2 inch we added there does not affect your cinching. It is just to replace the 1/2 inch we took at the zipper area. So take note of that. Now I'm going to go ahead to label the pattern and cut this out. So on this bottom part here, I'm going to bring in my front pattern, and I'm just going to use the shape of the front pattern to trace out on the back pattern here. So these are the pattern pieces for the back. Now we're going to go ahead to draft out the loops on the inside of our blouse. So I just went ahead to draft out everything we have for the back, and I took note of the yoke as well. So I just went ahead to draft this. You do not have to draft this completely the way I did. You can just trace off of what you have at your back pattern before cutting out the back pattern pieces. So this is basically what we have. So what I'm going to do in order to mark this out, I am going to go ahead on this point to come down by 1 inch, because we do not want this to show through the yoke area after snatching. So I went ahead to work with 1 inch at this point, and then on this opposite side as well, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inch at this point here, and then we're going to rule this, connecting this to meet with each other. And then at the bottom part as well, because we do not want the closure to show through this shape part of our blouse, we're just going to rule a straight line a few inches away from that point. So I'm marking out 1 inch, and then I'm going to rule a straight line. So after ruling this out, we're going to take out 2 inches from our original body measurement we went ahead to mark out. So I'm taking out 2 inches at the top and 2 inches at the bottom, and then we're going to rule a straight line. This is to make sure we have a perfect snatched effect on the inside before closing up our zipper. So this part here is going to serve as the eyelet, and then I'm cancelling out this part here because we are no longer working with that part. And now we're going to move on to cut this out. So guys, this is the fabric we're going to work with for this tutorial, and this is Milkado fabric. I got 1 yard of this, and it was actually enough for the making of this blouse. So now let's get right into cutting. So we're going to place all our pattern pieces on the fabric, and this is on fold, and I'm cutting this out, leaving 1/2 inch at the top and 1/2 inch at the bottom for sewing allowance, and at the sides I'm adding 1 inch sewing allowance, and I'm just going ahead to cut this out. I'm also going to do the same thing for the back pieces as well. So with that, we've come to the end of this tutorial. If you enjoyed watching this video and you found it helpful, do not forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not yet subscribed already, and I will see you on the sewing part of this tutorial. Bye guys.